بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Your Excellencies, esteemed guests and distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor and privilege for me to welcome you all and to moderate this important session, pioneering AI governance, regulation and transforming policy for the future. So before we start, allow me to just pass the mic on to just our panelists and allow them a few minutes to introduce themselves.
Good morning. I am Ali, the Group CIO of Depa United Group, a public listed company. We have 4 public listed groups, started in London Stock Exchange, Singapore Stock Exchange and Nasdaq Dubai. The biggest group do an interior contracting for hotels, 5-star hotels, like Burj Al Arab, Atlantis, Presidential Palace, Flame Towers in Baku, Sun and Sand in Singapore, Hilton, Sheraton, Four Seasons, etc. Second group do interior of retail, like Dolce & Gabbana, Chanel, Apple stores everywhere. And third group do an interior of super yacht and private jet. Nice to see you all.
Naima Farasi, so I'm a Senior Vice President. I work for Mubadala Investment Company. So for those who don't know who Mubadala is, so basically we're one of the sovereign based out of Abu Dhabi. So we are a responsible investor, invest across multiple asset classes and throughout different geography. So what I do for Mubadala is that I lead the AI transformation and strategy efforts that aims at looking at how we can leverage AI and harness its full power to sort of become better investors and deploy our capital with better return. Thank you.
Hi, Walid Hizawi. I'm the Group Chief Strategy Officer of Gargash Group. So the group is a conglomerate of approximately 40 companies. We operate into 4 verticals. One is automotive, one is real estate, one is financial services and investments. And more recently, we have a lot more focus around AI and building AI solutions within the group. So,
thank you. And just a quick sentence by myself. So I'm Dr. Reem Lebhar. I'm a board advisor to the private office of His Highness Sheikh Saeed Al Maktoum in Dubai. I'm also CEO of Minatech AI and former group chief digital officer of Abu Dhabi Aviation Group. It's a group of 10 entities, aviation related, part of ADQ in Abu Dhabi. So let's jump in, and as we all know, AI is not just reshaping industries, it's reshaping societies, economies, and global relation. The UAE has been a true pioneer in this field and becoming the first nation in the world to appoint a minister of states in artificial intelligence back in 2017. And it was a visionary move. And since then, it inspired more than 60 other countries to follow and create their own national AI strategies. So the idea today of today's discussion is to explore how the wider international community are building the framework that ensure AI development is innovative, ethical, safe, and beneficial for all. So allow me to just set the stage and jump directly in. And ladies first, Naima, how would you characterize the global landscape of AI governance today?
If I have to summarize it with one word, I would say at the moment, it's such a huge patchwork, right? We have multiple regulators with different attempts to regulate AI and with different views and approaches. And if we start with, for example, the EU is taking quite a stringent stand and is looking at regulating AI developers and application providers based on risk, which means that it looks into how much harm a specific application can sort of potentially cause. And then there's different levels of sort of regulations. And it's deemed to be the one that is the most, I would say, stringent at this stage of the game. If we think about the US is taking a stand that's way more flexible as usual, right? No one's surprised. And they focus more on making sure they don't curb innovation and So basically, instead of having one set of rules, they have multiple regulating agencies that focus on different areas. For example, you have a regulator that would focus on financial applications, another one for healthcare, another one on consumer applications. So different, I would say, approaches. In between, somewhere you have the UK, and the UK is taking, I would say, quite a balanced approach in between the US and the EU. And so they look into regulation at sectorial level, but they still have sort of a set of framework that applies to all. I think also on the UK side, there's efforts to sort of try and look into having a overarching regulator of the regulators, which I think would bring a bit more consistency in the way. And then finally, we have China. And China is taking a completely different stand. It's really focusing on sort of the content and making sure that it's in line with basically the sort of the state directions. Let's put it that way.
So let's build on that and allow me to ask Ali first, what do you think? And also what major trends and regulatory shift are shaping this space in your view?
Right, I'm just gonna go a little bit abstract level. I think first, what's happening in AI regulation and in other regulation, if we talk about blockchain regulation as well, or decentralized technology or decentralized finance, it's trying to catch up with innovation. So what's happening is the technology and innovation is surprising us with new technology, revolution concepts, and then the regulator trying to catch up and setting the rules how to make this technology safe and ethical and transparent, etc. So that's, I think, one of the major things. The other thing is the fragmentation, as Naima have just mentioned. Like each part of the regulation is talking about particular sector or particular geographic location or particular industry. While we operate across borders and we operate across sectors, I cannot go and put some regulation only for a particular function like finance and ignore, for example, the human resource. They work in harmony with each other. So the fragmentation is one of the characteristics I feel is enforcing itself. The other thing is it's reactive, as I said. Like we didn't reach to a point where the standards or the regulation is proactive. Like if we talk about data privacy, for example, they have one concept called privacy in the design. So the same things we need to have in the AI, for example, EU AI Act has to say it's like ethical in the design to be in the first place. When I'm designing a solution or a protocol, I have to keep these kind of things up front. I think another thing which all regulation are talking about, and I believe it's missing, which is the enforcement of these regulation. And until now, all these regulation is recommendation. I think just a couple weeks ago, the Homeland Security of US have released a playbook. And again, it's best practice, things to be considered. Make sure that your AI is explainable, it's transparent. Consider the data privacy, the data residency, all rules, 8 rules of GDPR. You are keeping the data in the same jurisdiction. You understand what the AI protocol is doing to your data. So it's auditable, it's explainable. All these is just kind of recommendation yet. So it's not enforced, though they are talking about penalties yet to be applied, but till the moment, it's not really enforced. I think that's one of the main thing in terms of regulation. Yeah.
Thank you, Ali. So allow me to dig a little bit more on that, actually. And I'm trying to move now from the big picture to the more practical tools. And this is more a question for Walid, I believe. So moving from that big picture to my practical view, what do regulatory sandboxes and public-private partnership plays in piloting responsible AI framework?
So any new technology around the world that comes in, usually you have regulators coming and putting so much regulation that hinders companies to innovate. So sandboxes are a very important component that will enable and allow companies to innovate but also not face regulatory backlashes. And this is not something new in AI. In the UK, in 2010, they did the same for fintechs. They wanted fintechs to come and launch safely in the UK. They want to make sure that they are compliant with central banks, so created sandbox environment to allow that innovation, but also get the government, central banks, and so on to come and really help them get compliant. Very similar to UAE, what they have done with the crypto and blockchain. I think UAE is a pioneering country in that space. Again, create a sandbox, allow companies to come in and also learn from these companies. What are the things that are difficult to monitor? Certain things our government maybe haven't thought about it. So it's also learning curve also for the government. AI is the only technology, once you deploy it, it might change. So putting that governance in place is once very critical. Second, when it comes to the sandbox, it's really a learning for all parties involved into how do I govern better this space.
So agility and trust, so somehow it's easier said than done, especially when the AI can move way faster than traditional policy making cycles. So let me ask also Naima, and I would like to know from your point of view, how do we balance innovation with precaution in AI policy making to avoid both over-regulation or under-regulation?
I think what's important to put into perspective is that the intention should be to regulate enough without suffocating innovation, right? If you go ahead and sort of start releasing regulation that's preventing and hindering, increasing the cost of compliance, number one, the complexity to understand which regulation do I sort of fall under. What's going to happen is that there's going to be like an innovation exodus. Everyone is going to be moving and relocating towards regulations and I would say regions where the regulations is less stringent. So it's really about striking the right balance and ensuring that you have the right level of protections to the point where it doesn't really sort of prevent you from operating and from doing business. I think these sandboxes we've touched upon are very critical. It really helps both the innovators and the regulators get together, pilot applications, try and understand compliance, where are the potential issues. So they're in a sort of a mini live environment without being fully exposed to the public. So it's in a controlled space. If you think about the regulation also, I think we need to regulate the process rather than regulating the product itself. So it's about looking into how we develop applications and AI models and applications. And it's about making sure that there is respect of the rules in the way we sort of select the data, clean the data, build the models, test them, and roll them out. And all the efforts that we hear about, even from some of the hyperscalers around putting in place these red teams and having in place a lot of traceability when it comes to the model deployment. So I think all of these efforts will remain very, very critical. Audits, impact assessments. So all of that in a control, like really in a, I would say, measured way, really.
Thank you, Naima. So I would like to go a little bit deeper and ask, because it's very wide. So it reminds me the story of the LLM and now the specific sector LLMs that we're trying to build. So each sector almost speaks his own language, and sometimes it feels like AI is trying to be fluent in all of them. So let me ask Ali a question about super regulated industry. So, for example, when it comes to sector like finance, healthcare, even education, how should AI governance adapt to address their unique challenges and opportunities in your view?
Right. I just want to shed some light about regulation in general. Like businesses really doesn't care about regulation. Business care about the bottom line, the revenue. So regulation should not really become a hinder to really stop or make the operation inefficient. Like if we talk about cybersecurity or finance regulation, and we are talking about AI now. So it has to be balanced between the operation efficiency, where I'm here able to operate, able to function, but still I'm doing it in the right way and the best practice and within the regulation of the jurisdiction where I'm operating in. And this balance is really difficult because sometimes the regulation itself is conflicting. And for the like CIO, it's to navigate between the regulation and try to really find the right balance. It's very difficult. And I, for example, can give an example about the cloud strategy versus the GDPR, the data protection. So if I'm gonna really comply between both of them, I will be in trouble. The right, for example, to be forgotten is not practical if I have a daily backup of my data, of the records of any customers, and then one of the customers comes and said, well, I'm quitting from your organization and I need all my record to be deleted. This is not practical, although it's one of the rules, one of the rights of GDPR or data protection regulation, which is the golden rule, the data portability. If somebody goes to do now and said, well, I'm moving to Etisalat or to EAND, give me all the records that you guys are having, that's one of my rights as per GDPR. They cannot do that. There is a lot of examples where really the regulation is very tied and hindering the operation. And I believe the best approach is to discuss with the lawmakers and try to explain the practical perspective, which nobody knows but you, but the business, because it's vary from business to business, it's vary from industry to industry. If we talk about finance, for example, talking about now the TradeFi versus DeFi, where a lot of companies now we are one of them, for example, we accept payment in Bitcoin. And we have a digital wallet for the group. So I have to comply still with the regulation, while my client from Italy, from UK, from London is paying me in a digital asset, and I have to really make sure what I'm doing is all legitimate and it's all regulated. The auditors, the Big Four, who's auditing us every quarter, are able to have all the transparency that they are looking for and all the traceability it's required in my general ledger or in my account payable, receivables, etc. So there is general rules which applies to everybody, applied across department, like make sure that, for example, you are comply with the normal regulations that applies on all jurisdictions, the ethical of the technology, the transparency, the traceability, all of those should be there. However, there is a specific regulation required per function, per industry, and I think it's getting on developed right now. There are a lot of working bodies around the world and in Abu Dhabi, for example. If we talk about several working bodies like VARA in Dubai and ADGM in Abu Dhabi, but still there are a lot of things to be regulated, and every day there is a new things. For example, quantum computing now it's became commercialized and it's coming to re-challenge the entire cybersecurity and encryption. And again, this need to have a special regulation. Now, I think there is a new quantum computer release for normal user. There is no proper regulation that can govern how this, because it's a super powerful machine and it can break all the encryption and the security in the market. So finance will be in risk. And there should be some urgent regulation to govern these technology before it really lose control.
Thank you, Ali. But it's not easy. I'm listening to you and I'm just, I'm thinking about the leaders we have in the room. And it's not easy, actually, to balance between the innovation itself and embarking your own legal team or compliance team in the journey of AI, because you still need to educate. So if you are one of the leaders we have today in the room, and I will ask Walid for that, how you start your AI governance journey? What would you say are the most critical steps in that journey?
First, let me answer that in two steps. One is around private companies. Having an AI governance is very important. When we started this whole journey, we had people, you don't want people putting confidential information into public LLMs, interacting with them and sharing data that's not supposed to be sharing. So we had a whole discussion around, what are the tools that should be allowed within the company. Maybe we get some of the enterprise licenses rather than allowing, because people and employees today want to use AI. They want to see how AI can help them better in their productivity, get things done faster, and so on. So having one is very important. I'll touch base on what you mentioned, Ali. Data, AI governance has a prerequisite also for data governance as well. So there is an element around that. But also not putting too many things to hinder innovation. So any organization today should have an element of an AI experimental lab, things where people can try, things where ideas, innovation can be done safely over there and then very quickly deliver to a business value. Ultimately, businesses will be focusing on AI and are focusing on AI to deliver business value. Can this new technology give me more revenue? Can it reduce my cost? Can it ultimately give me a competitive edge in the market? That's what businesses are looking for. Any boardroom that you walk in is probably a topic of conversation today. But creating that governance layer that protects the company or even beyond the company organization is very important, but done in a way that multiple stakeholders are sort of building that rather than just one department. Typically it's IT who inherits that, but get more stakeholders involved so that it doesn't hinder innovation. I'll just give you an example. We had one of our training lady, she had 5 agents. One was her PA, one was doing her announcement, one was building her governance, and she had a full team. And none of the team members actually knew she was actually building, and she was just very focused on AI on her own. And she came up when we created this whole lab. She was like, "This is what I have built by myself, and this is how I increased my productivity." To take the learning from them, see what can be deployed at a larger scale in the organization is important, and that governance layer plays a very critical role. Governance in AI, you hear a lot around the big LLMs, what US is doing, China is doing, so there's a lot of focus around governing the LLM. You want to make sure that there is no issue around answers. Some of the tools that went in around, for example, I'll just give you a practical example, reviewing CVs. You don't want to have discriminations around, I don't know, an AI tool used in HR that will discriminate certain people. So there's a lot of discussion around that, but also within organization is important to do it right and to do it in a way that promotes innovation.
If I just can comment, one comment. I think we are in very early inception stage, and what's happening is that we are in a very dangerous era, because whether we like it or not, our users in our organization are using AI. So AI is like, there is every day a new tool that can do something using an AI. Now for suppliers, they have to add the word AI in order for them to sell. So you name it, any tools, any products, they got an AI on it. So it's like going with the fashion, going with the hike, which going on. And for us as like CIOs and as a leaders of technology, it's very, very difficult, because we really need to implement kind of governance to make sure there is no leakage of sensitive data. At least if my finance department is uploading the trial balance or the income statement to an AI to do a documentary or to do I don't know, a slide for the board meeting. And I don't know really where is this AI storing this income statement. I am putting myself and my organization under huge risk, because one day this data might be leaked, might be sold, might be disclosed without me, knowing that. So, and I think this is where we are. It's not just the big players. We all can regulate Copilot. We all can regulate ChatGPT, but there are tons of tools right now in everywhere where like people are using it, users are using it, and they might really put sensitive data. And I think one of the precocious action we can do is education, to have like a workshop and awareness that, guys, this is not really safe. If you need a tool, you have to come to me and ask me so we can buy a really compliance friendly tool before we start using it for business.
But it's not easy, if I may add, because, for example, in my previous life as a group CDO, still you have a lot of pressure to deliver and to move on with AI and progress in your AI agenda. And at the same time, when you go to your legal and compliance team, they are busy with deals. They are not yet educated, actually, on AI. So this is where, we are moving at different pace. So allow me just maybe a tip for the leaders in the room, and to try to educate really our legal team, our compliance team, to help us and support us through that journey. And I will ask Naima to help me here. So in your view, how I can explain to them and help them support me that I would like to explain them in what way should AI governance differ from traditional tech policies due to the unique nature of AI technology today. So how they can support me in that, in your view?
I think two couple of words. The first one is fast and the second is continuous. You need to very quickly come up with the right AI policy to support your organization and your employees to start experimenting and use these tools and achieve all the value you've highlighted, basically. Continuous, because it's not a one-time job, right? The tools are coming up every day and they're evolving, and the data is like that they're inserting might differ. So it's really about being able to continuously review and continuously support. So for me, it's really about having these policies that are as forward-looking as possible. And the thing is, usually with regulation, we said that it's usually very reactive. I mean, I'm going to pick an example that's a completely different industry, but it's taken about, I think, 80 years for seatbelts to be mandated in cars, right? So there has to be, I mean, it went to, years and years and decades where there were lobbies trying to push not to have seatbelts, saying this is going to let people think that cars are unsafe. It's going to basically increase the price of production. It's going to curb the sales and everything. But eventually, after a series of, obviously big accidents probably, who won? The regulator, right? And we now have seatbelts in cars. So I hope we can take a stand that's different in this AI sort of journey, because the potential impact is tremendous. So it's very important that we really react fast and continuously review and reinvent ourselves. Compliance, risk team, it's about having everyone. If I speak about good practice from my perspective, it's very critical to have within any type of organization having sort of an oversight board. And it needs to be functional. You need to have people from risk, you need to have people from legal, you need to have people from compliance, you need to have people from the business, right? Because they need to explain what they want and what use they want to have of the tools. So it's very important that there is sort of alignment at these oversight committee levels to make sure that we can still get the best out of the technology operating in a safe and responsible environment.
Yeah, so it's a tough balance between innovation and being risk averse somehow. So I'll pick up on this last sentence of yours, Naima, and I will ask Ali, or Walid, how we can continue to encourage policymakers to themselves encourage innovation without creating risk or regulate without slowing the progress and slowing us basically innovating in the organization, because still I'm seeing that sometimes has a risk, especially in super regulated industries. So how we can push them to help us and not slow us down. So the question is for both of you, Walid and Ali.
Okay, I think it's not going to be an optional. It's happening. If they don't regulate, things is going forward. Innovation is going. People are using the tools. Mistake happening. Data get leaked. Data get problems happening. Crisis happening. So I think all regulators on whether in our region or globally, as Naima had mentioned, they know that they know the risk and they are educating themselves, and that's why usually there is two silos where the tacky people are in one silos and the regulators, traditional regulators, are in different. And now you are finding a lot of people who have the two words together. You know, somebody who is really understanding the technology, digesting how the technology is working, and knows the how to regulate and how to make laws and put best practices on the law. So I think it's not optional anymore, and I think all nations are competing with each other. And I think very soon they will have something across borders, not just particular UK or EU having their own. And EU, for example, is very famous. They really are ahead of other nations in terms of regulations. But not always their regulation applies in all different type of or regions. So I think they realize that. And that's why there is always a new releases. And I think going forward, enforcement of the regulation gonna also comes across the globe. It's not gonna be an option and up to the business anymore. Walid?
I think you've given a very good summary around that. It's important that, as you mentioned, countries are competing with each other, and there is a lot of governance being put in place. Europe is definitely ahead of the curve, and even touching base on our earlier topic around sandbox, EU has actually mandated all European countries to have a sandbox in place for AI. So that's something that shows the advancement of governance there. UAE has never been is not known for not being proactive, so typically is a very proactive country when it comes to new technology. So we have, as you mentioned, one of the first countries that has a minister of AI. There is a lot of event interaction between public and private, so that conversation is flowing. Dubai AI Week was last week, and I think that's one of the good examples around that. Also, I know the ministries, the governments are doing a lot of reaching out to private companies, workshops, so to make sure that conversation is there and there is policies that are being put in place, not just one-dimensional, but actually takes into multiple dimension into those decisions.
I just think one good example answering this question is blockchain. I think the DeFi, the decentralized finance or decentralized ledger, is one of the industry that was not regulated because it was very speedy. There were a lot of protocols and concepts coming in. And because it's not regulated, there were a lot of fraud, which really hindered and gave a bad reputation to the entire industry. And now the same leaders of the industry are begging the regulator to come and really regulate this Wild West. It's became a jungle. How any group of people can create a protocol, collect money from people, and then run away. Basically because there is no regulation. And now the whole industry is really waiting to have a proper, mature and balanced regulation to govern this industry. And the same things applies on AI and in every other technology.
So Before I open the floor for a few questions, allow me to ask you, has a quick takeaway, or what would be your tip or your secret ingredient in your sauce on how you balance with innovation versus not the fear, but like, you know, the headache sometimes we have from colleagues from compliance and legal and creating policy and all of that. How you balance innovation with the compliance thing in your organization and being a successful leader?
Let me do one thing. Let me share one secret wish instead. So I think as users and deployers of AI solution, I think what we ought to see is really convergence of these regulations. It's very important in the future that there's convergence of all of these sort of ways of regulating, really to sort of ensure that across different geographies, we're all operating in ecosystems that are as conducive and as supportive, and we don't see innovation shift from regions to others. So I would leave you with a hope for sort of convergence of regulations.
Thanks.
Takeaway, I think Naima mentioned it well earlier, be fast, but also make sure that there's a good governance in place. We need to have a collaborative view around governance, whether between public and private or even within the same organization. And I think that summarizes all. Yeah, look into also global AI governance. That's important to have similar frameworks around the world.
I will just say collaboration with the lawmaker, with the compliance department. Try to explain to them why you believe that this is practical and this is not practical. I think open dialogue is always useful and can really show different perspective to different parties.
Thank you. Thank you both for your amazing insight. So allow me to conclude because we don't have time for questions, unfortunately. So just a quick reflection. So first, global AI governance landscape is accelerating. That is very clear. It's a real race for responsible implementation. AI governance must be sector-specific, technically informed and forward-looking, because we are not longer regulating static systems, but dynamic, evolving intelligence. A recent report from World Economic Forum indicates that AI could contribute up to $15.7 trillion to the global economy by 2030, making ethical governance not just a regulatory issue, but a core driver of sustainable growth. So our shared opportunity to build AI framework, they are not only resilient and future-ready, but also centered on human safety and innovation. On behalf of all of us, I sincerely thank our distinguished panelists for their insights and each one of you for your engagement and participation, and thank you all.